Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and today I'm excited to have two guests, Andy and James Matthews, on the show today to talk about building a firm within a firm service model. Andy is the CEO of Consolidated Planning, a large firm that has a 20-year history. James is the managing director of Blueprint, a firm dedicated to serving next-generation clients and wholly owned subsidiary of Consolidated Planning. James and Andy teamed up about a year ago to launch Blueprint as a new service model dedicated to next-gen clients. However, it has its own advisors, marketing, recruiting, website, even office space. They have truly allowed Blueprint to operate independently to reshape the planning process to the ideal fit for their target clients. We talked about the decision to launch this platform, Andy's willingness to invest in it and not even see break even for at least 2 years, how their advisors are compensated, their service model, how they got their broker-dealer on board with the idea, and more. If you work for a larger firm or are looking to build an XYPN-style service model but aren't interested in being an entrepreneur and owning your own firm, then this episode is for you. Support for today's episode comes from Ruby Receptionist, the only live remote receptionist service dedicated to helping financial service professionals win more clients and build trust. From their studio in Portland, Oregon, Ruby's friendly professional receptionists ensure exceptional client experiences by answering calls live in English or Spanish, transferring calls, taking messages, addressing common problems, collecting new client intake, making follow-up calls, and more, just like an in-house receptionist, but at a fraction of the cost. Let Ruby help you turn your rings into relationships. For a special offer, visit callruby.com/XYPN and use promo code XYPN or call 1-844-853-7829. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/133. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Andy and James. Hey, Andy and James, welcome to the show, guys. Thanks so much for both being on.
Thanks for having us, Alan.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, so I'm really excited because y'all have a very progressive, and I try to not use that word. I hate progressive as much as the word innovative. You truly do have a progressive firm in the way that you're structuring it. So I'm really excited to have you on and sort of talk about what we've talked a lot in terms of in theory about, but not necessarily, there's not a lot of firms out there doing what you're doing in practice. And that's truly the firm within a firm concept where we have a established parent company that is a successful financial planning firm that's profitable and growing, and yet also investing in a sort of separate service model business line that's actually got its own brand, its own website, its own advisors that's focused on next generation clients. So very excited to dig into this. So Andy, could you give me just sort of an overview of the parent company, Consolidated Planning, and sort of, how many clients, how many assets, sort of how many advisors, sort of where the firm is today?
Perfect. So we're a firm, we've been around for several decades, located out of Charlotte, North Carolina, but in the Carolinas and Southeast mainly, although we have clients all over. We've got about 120 advisors, fully licensed, very planning focused, planning process based, individual planning, business planning, and about 45 staff members that support. We have had, as a firm, very low turnover. I'll say very close-knit, been growing slowly but surely over the years. We are, from an asset management perspective, we really, I'll say, change, as a lot of firms have taken this path down, I'll say, more the wealth management space, where while we write our fair share of protection business, we manage about $1.5 billion in assets. And we manage several $1 billion worth of protection business, meaning life insurance, disability, death benefits. We are, again, growing and always looking forward to that new thing, whatever that may be.
Fantastic. So do you have sort of a niche market? Are you mainly working with, high net worth baby boomers, or is it a little more broad than that?
Yeah, I'd say more broad than that. Certainly, our focus, the general client, is a baby boomer, and we're worried about retirement income planning, even though they may not have fully stepped into that part of their life yet. But we do our fair share of work with Xers and millennials, although just less. And we do a lot of individual planning work, and we do a lot of business planning work for businesses and business owners, trying to help them exit their businesses. So we are all things to all people, which can be dangerous, but that's who we are.
Fantastic. So, James, can you give me sort of an overview of the Blueprint subsidiary firm and where things stand today with that?
Sure, Alan. So Blueprint was really formed within the last 12 months from being a nameless concept to an actual open door brick and mortar firm with advisors and clients that we're helping. And our focus and mission really is to make financial planning affordable and accessible to the next generation of clients. And so we've spent the last year really thinking that through and figuring out exactly how we want to do that and who we want to be, and really focusing on opening our doors so we can start to help clients in the way that we want to work with them.
So how many advisors and sort of how many clients? Is it just you with a few clients, or do you have a team there?
That's a great question. So we have hired about 10 advisors so far, 4 of whom are all the way through the licensing process and the training process and are actually working with clients. And then we have a leadership team of 4 as well. And 3 of the 4 of us are also advisors and have been working with clients. So at year end, we have about 30 or so clients now that are actually paying fees and are somewhere in the planning process with an advisor. As we continue to bring on advisors next year, that number will scale pretty quickly. We didn't take our first fee from a client until August of this year. So we've really only got about 4 months worth of experience in front of clients at this point.
And then, I'm sorry, did you say how many clients you're currently serving?
Currently, we have about 30 who are in the process that are actually paying fees and working with an advisor.
So a pretty healthy, you have been really aggressive in your hiring of advisors. Can you talk a little bit about sort of, obviously, the advisor to client ratio and are you just seeing enough pipeline and potential that y'all are going ahead and sort of hiring folks, or are they working at, parent company consolidated planning and just sort of lending some time to Blueprint?
Well, that's a good question. No, we are hiring advisors specifically to work with Blueprint clients. So we know that as we hire advisors, the more advisors we have on board early on, the more clients that we can serve. And so a big part of what we're bringing them in to do is to be able to go out into their own networks and spheres of influence and really be able to serve their peers. And so as we get the first year or 2 or 3 even under our belts, we need enough advisors here working in our demographic to bring in enough clients for us to scale to the point where we want to scale to.
So we can dig into this a little bit more later, but are they on variable compensation or are they on flat salary?
Andy, do you want to speak to the way the compensation plan works a little bit?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. In the beginning, it's pure salaried as they're getting licensed up, learning the business. In their first 18 months, it's a salary plus variable compensation methodology. They start building their trails up on their investment block of business. Their I'll call fee trails up, their monthly fees for memberships that renew, and then their insurance renewals from protection business that they write. In that 19th month, they move to a pure variable compensation as they really have a practice that is in the beginning points. So it's about 3 months of salary as they become licensed and pass their testing, about 18 months of salary plus variable, and then pure variable once they have those renewals and trails kick in.
Okay. So it's sort of a blend of, we'll say, the new and the old in that, you're not fully salaried for your entire career, which is why I assume that just because the number that you're hiring, if everyone was going to make a salary, that it's a tough investment to make before you see the clients. So you're sort of hedging your risk a little bit and the risk is back on them. But you are paying a salary for 18 months. So it's not an eat what you kill from day one kind of thing. Oh,
yes. No, it adds up. It does add up. But we really started about this time last year by deciding what would be best for all parties. From the long run, given that we had a clean slate to work on, but wisdom and experience. So
we're going to dig into all of these pieces definitely in detail. So Andy, I'm just curious, how did you find your way to consolidated planning? Because your bio says, president and CEO. So are you an acting financial advisor, or were you brought in sort of as professional management for consolidated? Sort of what was your career path?
So I'll give you the short version. I spent 7 or so years out of college working at a financial planning software company. ran the division that did the financial planning software and sold it to people like you and I to do business with clients. Left that to become a financial advisor with Consolidated Planning almost 13 years ago. And long story short, ended up owning the company, buying the company, owning the company about 6 years ago. And I still spend a little time in the trenches, but less and less every single year. I think it's important I believe, at least as a CEO, to understand what's happening in this dynamic world that we live in with tax law changes and new demographics that just show up seemingly overnight. So, but less and less. That's been my journey.
Okay. So you were an advisor at the firm and then, bought out the founders.
Correct.
Wow. So that is a conversation for another day, because that's a very interesting topic that a lot of folks are trying to figure out how to actually appropriately do succession planning, which is cool.
Yeah, we've had our experience with that. So yes, love to do that.
So then, James, what was your path to Consolidated Planning? I guess how did you get around to here and where you are today?
That's a great question. I'll give you the short version too. I started out of college in 2004 in banking, and I'm from Baltimore City originally, and worked for a major regional bank up there for a few years and started just in a customer service type of a role and migrated into a sales role and was doing consumer lending. And in that process, got my securities licenses and started helping clients with more investment related work. And of course, then 2008 came. And we were acquired by another firm. And that was around the same time I had moved to Charlotte as well, sort of the first wave of the great migration from the Northeast to Charlotte, and had stayed with the same company and then ended up going through a merger due to that acquisition. Stayed on there for another 4 years and had moved into more of a wealth management type role and was working with, I would call, middle affluent type clients on the bank side of the business with consumer credit and things of that nature, but was part of a broader advisory team. Was really the one tasked with the credit facilities for the broader wealth management picture. So I was learning a lot about planning and I learned a lot about the investment side of the business, but with a holistic focus of being one of many on a team. And it was around that same time, this would have been around 2012, I started taking the CFP courses. I had enrolled in an online program through NC State, got through that pretty quickly and took the exam in 2013 and passed that. And then in the interim there, I had shifted and gone to work for a retirement plan administrator here in Charlotte. They were beginning to offer professional investment advice services inside of the 401k plans that they administered and serviced. And so I left and joined the team there as an advisor, call center environment on the phones. I was one of about 6 when I got there and did that for about a year and a half. And then our team lead left to take another job at the end of that time period. And so I was asked to take over the leadership of that team. And so I did that for about another year and a half. And we grew the advisory team there from 6 or 7 of us to 18 when I left in 2017, beginning of this year. Had grown the assets that were being managed there in the in-plan retirement space to about $16 billion, which was neat to be a part of that. That was really very much a startup within another organization. And we also focused a lot on financial education. So I traveled a good bit and was doing a lot of workshops and seminars for the plan participants for whose retirement plans that we were the administrator for. And so I got a lot of experience being in front of people and in big groups and doing the educational, corporate wellness, educational type of workshop. And so fast forward to the beginning of, or really end of last year, I was approached by the recruiter actually at Consolidated Planning who had reached out to me. And I was familiar with the company. Actually, somebody I had worked with previously was a relative of the founder. And so I was at least familiar with the firm and knew what they did and had sense enough to take the meeting. And it was right before XYPN 15. It was the week before that I had met her. And so I knew I was coming back in to meet Andy the week after the conference and was sort of at this pivot point in my career where I was looking to expand on what I had been doing and really was focused on wanting to work with my peers from a planning standpoint. I was seeing a lot of my peers who were starting businesses and having families and really weren't getting good access to good planning help. And so I found myself answering a lot of questions for people. And through that process, had discovered you guys and what you were doing and helping other people start firms, and had listened to a lot of the early podcasts and got really excited about what I was hearing others doing. And so I had come to the conference knowing I'd be meeting Andy the following week. I wasn't sure exactly what he was up to, but was interested in learning more about it. Through a several month period there of us kind of just putting our heads together and me meeting other parts of the team over at Consolidated Planning, decided to jump ship and come on board and help Blueprint at the beginning of this year.
So it's interesting. You said a recruiter contacted you, which is generally associated with, some of the largest firms out there. I'm trying to think if I'm aware of any other firm the size of Consolidated, the parent company, that even has a recruiter. I noticed Blueprint has a recruiter as well. So I guess tell me about that role. Is that someone who's just actively looking for talent for the firm? I mean, that, like I said, that's pretty rare in our space.
Yeah, I mean, we think that if you want to scale and you want to grow your firm, you have to be intentional about the who you want to have on the team. And for me as a CEO, just the who, how we're staffed and the talent that we have, it's really ultimately my responsibility. And you just have to have dedicated people to that's day in and day out. Their job is to do that. So it's a very minimal expense for companies that intend on scaling and want to have systems in place to do that because it's part of their mission. So for us as CP, 7-8 years ago, we just decided we had the goods to bring it to the rest of the financial services space in these parts of the country, and a recruiter was important. And at Blueprint, I'm going to say doubly important. That we think while we're in, I'll say, phase one right now, scaling is important for several reasons in the millennial space very, very quickly. I believe it's really important from a national perspective as well to be able to do this. And you just have to have people that are intentional.
No, like I said, I think it's fantastic. I'm not aware of most firms your size having one. And folks might have it as a, sort of a byproduct or an add-on to another position. Or they may incentivize, advisors get paid $1,000 when they recruit, a new advisor to the firm or something like that. But to actually have someone on the team fully dedicated to that, I agree. I think that's how you bring in top talent, and not only top talent, but folks that are going to be a really good fit for the firm, because you have someone that's their whole focus.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
James was contacted by a recruiter. So Andy, was he contacted because you were already in this mindset of, hey, we want to build out, what has now become Blueprint, so go find me someone? Or was this just sort of, hey, this guy looks like he'd be a really good fit. However, and then it sort of evolved from there. I guess, when did the decision to roll out a next gen service model come?
So I'll say by October of last year, 16, we knew we were going to do Blueprint. We had the bones of a business plan written out. We knew the types of people that we needed to have. Mainly, we knew we needed someone like James here to be able to connect to clients, lead our client services, our planning process, lead the marketing side of things. We needed a recruiter, let's just say, a talent person. We needed a liaison to CP for shared services of all shapes and sizes from a scale perspective. And we needed someone to take care of our new people, to make sure that they had what they needed, be their quarterback, if you will. And so for at least those 4 positions, we knew by November 1, I'll say that's last year, that those are the roles, and we went out and started looking for them. And it took us about 60 days maybe to find all 4 of those roles, maybe even a little longer than that. But that's how it came about this time last year.
So James really was recruited to build this. So I guess what drove the decision? I mean, because that's not a small investment, right? Most firms under this model bring in one young advisor, or the young advisor comes on. The James gets hired and says, hey, could I do this? And they give him 5 hours a week, to try to build this. You're hiring 4 people. So, I mean, you're not all in, but like you're getting close.
Yeah, no, I will tell you that the first time when I made the first person their offer, I said to myself that morning, all right, we're doing this. It's for real. That was a little self-talk. So I think your question is really around the why first. And so I'll back up a step and say that something hit me in middle of the year last year, that we weren't being intentional as a firm, as intentional as we could be at CP. Meaning we were serving a lot of masters at once. We really kind of covered some of that ground already in our conversation today, where we're good at accumulation planning and business planning and distribution planning and helping people be better savers, and boomers and Xers and millennials. And it's just hard to be great at all things in life. And every time we were trying to be intentionally, train on one area, develop advisors on one area, you'll have to be turning your back on another to a degree. And so with 75 plus million millennials, we were talking about traveling on airplanes earlier. You go to an airport today, it seems like half the airport are people that are great clients, and they're in this younger cohort. So for us, it was just clear that whether this is where the puck was going or the puck was maybe already here, nobody really has realized it yet, that we had to be very intentional as a firm for both demographics, and it would serve both demographics and therefore both firms, Blueprint and CP, Consolidated Planning, best to be intentional about both firms at the same time. And we decided that just doing it as a division of, if you will, because we're in a different location in Charlotte for Blueprint than CP, we needed to have our differences so that we can hang on to the good parts of our culture here at CP, but let Blueprint also establish who they needed to be for serving this largest generation ever of consumers of financial services. So that had to do with the why before really October. And their decisions took a little bit of a gut check, I'll say, but for the most part have been very easy and straightforward since.
So James, you were recruited for this, and it was something you were already interested in. So obviously there was good alignment there. If I can remember correctly from 2015, it's been a little while now since you and I had that conversation, but conversation or not, you had the opportunity to do this on your own, or you had the opportunity to come in and do this at Consolidated Planning, sort of we'll say the difference between the entrepreneurship and the intrapreneurship model. So did you really think that decision through in deciding, hey, do I want to do it here? Do I want to do it on my own? Was that even an option in your mind, or was this just sort of the clear way to go for you?
That's a great question. So yeah, I absolutely spent a good bit of time thinking about it. It was something I had been really thinking through for about a year before I had come in contact with Andy and learned about what they were doing. And so, I just wasn't in a great spot personally to try to start a business. My wife was in school and was finishing up a certificate program because she had just gone back to work full time. We have a 9-year-old son, and so she'd stayed home with him for a number of years and was just really entering the workforce again. And I was in a stable corporate job. I had a good job that I liked, and I was managing a team of advisors, and I enjoyed it very much, but just was really, needed something else. There's something else that was sort of tugging at me, was being able to do planning in the way I wanted to do it with people who were like me. So I had gone down the road. I was in the exploratory phase of what it would take to actually start on my own, but wasn't really ready to pull the trigger yet when this opportunity came along. And like I had said, the timing was perfect, and that I had come to the conference for the first time and got to bounce the idea off of a whole bunch of other people. I remember Matt Cosgriff was one that I had a good conversation with, and actually was studying the pitch deck that he had shared way back on his podcast on the plane on my way home, because I was getting ready to go in and see Andy in a day or two, and was prepared to be in full pitch mode when I got back, trying to tell him what this idea was that I had and why I thought he should do it, and was astounded when I got into the meeting with him that just how much of this was already formed in his mind and where he was headed. I wasn't prepared for that at all. I was sort of almost caught off guard by it, that he had the whole thing pretty much figured out, and it was in very close alignment to where I was. It was really interesting and unexpected. I did bring him back a copy of your book, and that was the basis of our discussion in that first meeting, was sort of around the retainer model and around the monthly fees and the sort of membership structure. But that was really it. The majority of everything else he really had sketched out at that point, and it was a pretty easy decision to make from there on.
And let me say, to James's credit, much as he might have thought I was in alignment with him, I thought he was in perfect alignment with us, and I don't think I ever told you this, James, but I just knew you were the guy for that role in our first meeting. So yeah.
It's amazing when the right match just sort of happens. I think this is older advisors or more experienced advisors. I'm not supposed to use the word older. More experienced advisors with established firms are, out there looking for young talent. They're looking for the Jameses of the world. And I hear all the time, oh, they're just entrepreneurs. They just want to go do their own thing. And I think there are so many, even inside XY Planning Network, I don't know the percentage, but I think a lot of our advisors are the they sort of get forced into entrepreneurship because they have a desire. Their true goal is they want to serve their peers. They want to work with younger clients. They want some control. They want to own a P&L and be able to make some decisions without, being micromanaged. But they don't have this like itching desire to go start their own business and be on their own. And this type of opportunity would be ideal for them, but there are so few of these. And so I commend you, especially Andy, but you both for figuring this out, but for being willing to build the opportunity to allow a James to come in and have possibly a I would say a much bigger impact at Blueprint, leveraging this because it's going to be, it's going to scale a lot faster because of the investment that you can make than going out solo. And like you said, James, not being in the personal situation to make that work.
Yeah, that was the way I looked at it, Alan. It was really a matter of, as I was kind of thinking it through, the pros and cons, I realized very quickly that, if I could come in here and help build this thing into, who knows what, with virtually no ceiling, imagine the amount of impact that would have on helping people, which was really the ultimate goal in the first place, right? It wasn't necessarily about me doing the thing my way as it was about how do we make planning in general just more accessible to people. That was really the primary motivation. And, by being part of something that's much larger than just me, I'm able to help shape the advisors that we hire. I'm able to help shape how they do planning with their clients. And I'm able to touch a whole lot more people than I ever could have myself.
So, Andy, can you share, whether it's exact numbers, just sort of in general, your thought around the financial investment that you made as a firm? Because in the pre-call or before we started recording, I told you a story, but I was at a conference recently speaking to the 100 largest RIAs at one of the large custodians and talking about in pretty much this model and investing in this model. And I was promoting hire a James, don't hire anybody else, just hire James and let them build this service model. And the question was, well, aren't I going to lose money in the first year? And I was like, yes, you are going to lose money because you're investing in this platform. And you've chosen to go beyond that and actually hire quite a few folks and invest. So can you talk about the decision and sort of your expected ROI of investing these kind of resources?
So two aspects of this. One, I'll back up a step and that I think this is just my personal opinion, a lot of people that have tried this space or have thought about the millennial space and then like shut it down pretty quickly, think of it just from an investment only perspective. Meaning they're thinking about managing money. They're going to charge a fee to manage the money, and they're going to charge what I'll call an upfront planning fee or a monthly planning fee. And the fee for the upfront planning fee has to be pretty high because they're just not, the economics aren't there for the AUM. And a little time with Excel will prove that point. And at the same time, we buy in and believe all that. I'll say this group of people that we're talking about have big futures to protect. And so, this is not a investments only shop. This is not an life insurance disability only shop. This is a planning focused, what is best for the client place. And we know that life insurance and disability insurance are going to be germane as well. Quite frankly, more germane often than they are at consolidated planning. And so a planning process, which we do at CP, that is going to be more intentional for what millennials want at that point in their lives, quite frankly, with bigger futures to protect and grow and save for. We're making money off of several product lines. And I think, therefore, it can be a lot more economical with the fees that we charge, coincidentally. We just think a better business model. So I just kind of gave away part of our secret sauce right there, which is fun, right?
Which is charge fees.
Yeah, charge fees for planning. And don't be afraid of the protection side of the business, right? A lot of the firms that are in the millennial space right now are really just doing wealth management. And they're going to have a hard time scaling. It's just they'll have trouble covering their lease, I think, on their space. So, just in my opinion. So the second part of more directly your answer, yeah, there is certainly an investment. I'll say for the first 2 years, we know that our break-even point for and this is where scaling comes into play, is about 22 advisors, fully licensed, doing business with about 4 memberships a month. We know that's not a crazy number to get to with the way that we support our advisors. And we're often running towards that. I sometime in the summer next year, we'll be at that mark.
So that's 4 clients per month per advisor.
Yeah. And I probably answered that a little wrong. I should say 2 memberships, right, per month with a head count of about 4 people, therefore. So it just depends on marital status, of course, right? But 2 memberships is probably the better way to say that. Minimum 22 advisors, 2 memberships a month. We will be not getting our money back, but we will certainly have been broken even, and we'll be moving into the black, and for a model that is built to scale. And that's where we are. It's a bit of a gut check, of course, but the first year's behind us pretty much, and we're looking forward to getting to that place in summer of 18. And I could see it on the horizon, quite frankly, pretty darn close.
Yeah, so just doing some quick math, that's 528-ish clients is sort of this break-even point, per year that are sort of coming on. So talk to me a little bit about so you did answer the question. That was my final question around the investment was going to be, how long are you okay spending money on this? And it sounds like 2 years is sort of what y'all have earmarked for. We'd like to be break even, around that 2-year mark, which I think is a good blueprint, no pun intended, for firms that are looking to make this investment that, it's not going to be break even in 6 months.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be in 2 to 3 years. I knew it was going to be 2 to 3 years before I broke even. I got my money back, and I was very okay with that. And it was an important consideration, but it was not a driving factor, given that the overall business model seems to make perfect sense. Like I said to myself this way, if I'd done this 3 years ago, how happy would I be right now?
Exactly. No, it's such a good point. So you have because this is totally separate, James, I'm curious, Blueprint has its own marketing department and its own, advisors are obviously going out and finding advisors or finding their own clients. I guess what's the expectation to generate, we'll call it 500 new clients a year, which is, in our world, especially for smaller RAs, it's just an astronomical number. So what's the plan, I guess, around, sort of laying that foundation to generate that type of lead flow for your advisors? And I guess how much of it will be put on them instead of on your marketing department?
Great, perfect question. So yeah, that's really where I spend a lot of my time right now, is really answering those questions. My role really revolves around the external market development for the firm. So that's everything from helping design and launch our website, which our permanent website just actually went live last week. It's planwithblueprint.com.
Yeah, folks need to go check that out. It looks awesome.
Thank you. I've been paying a lot of attention to everything everybody has said for the last year or two on the subject and trying to implement as much of that as possible. But I think it's really important that the marketing that we create speak directly to our potential client, not talk about them in the third person, but really speak directly to them, because that's really what we're after all, right? We want to help people, and you have to do that by talking to the people you want to help. There's an ebook that I wrote on there as well that's a download, and it's written very much the same way. It's basically dissecting our planning process, but speaking directly to the reader as somebody who we would want to work with us. So to answer your question, how do we do it? So a couple facets to what I'm working on. One, obviously, was just getting the website launched, and we'll continue building that out. We have a full-time social media director, we can call her, or marketing person, who works with me on a lot of this stuff too. So she handles all of our social media channels, our Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and she's posting content there. She also is really talented at video. So the video that's on our website, for example, she shot and edited that whole thing. So that's really her primary responsibility, is to just help me with the content creation and curation part of it. Now that the site's up too, we'll be blogging weekly and sending out updates through our mailing list weekly and things like that, just to be continually dripping on folks who are engaging with us online. So that's part of it. And part of it will be using more targeted Facebook ads going forward to direct people back to our website as sort of the hub of all activities. And we'll be doing quite a few in-person workshops in the space that we occupy in downtown Charlotte next year, with a range of topics, everything from how to be a better saver to just what is financial planning for younger people, to diving into student loans and all the things that people want to hear about, that we're finding as we're talking to prospective clients, and the things that we just know about our generation that are the sort of pain points. We want to be able to provide some on-site education to help address those things, and in turn, create a population of people for our advisors to engage with. So our goal, as we continue to expand on some of the marketing initiatives that we're doing, is to be able to provide our advisors with maybe half or so of their potential prospects by mid-year next year, between the marketing focus, the workshops, all of the advisors that are at Consolidated Planning currently all have clients who have children and even grandchildren in some cases who are part of our demographic. And so that's going to be a big focus too. It's figuring out how best to sort of cross-pollinate there and be able to serve other family members as it may be for a lot of the existing clients.
Yeah, I was kind of curious how you're setting the expectation, for new advisors that are coming in and you're saying, look, we're going to do all this marketing. We have someone dedicated to social media and blogging and sort of content marketing. You're obviously hosting events and that sort of thing. However, the onus is still on them, right? One, to go find additional clients is sort of in their network, and two, to be able to actually close and, the prospective clients that you've generated. So how are you sort of positioning that to them that you're going to help, but it's not 100% your responsibility to just hand them the clients?
Yeah, that's actually a good way. The way you've teed that up is exactly how it goes. So as we're going through the process of recruiting and interviewing potential advisor candidates, we know we need to see a lot of people, right? That goes back to your point earlier about having a dedicated recruiter. We've hired, I believe we're sitting right at 12, I think, for this year, but we saw like 300 candidates to hire 12.
Whoa.
And so, yes. So
that's what you were doing last year.
We're being very selective in terms of who we hire, because hiring for fit is every bit as important as hiring just to ability. And we want to make sure that we're finding the right types of advisors who have that sort of entrepreneurial streak, and they want to, build the practice around the client that they want to work best with, but, sort of within some guardrails, right? And so the type of person who is really like me, who maybe isn't in the best position to go start a business, that needs some infrastructure and some support and some, the processes are already designed and tested. And Andy could talk a little bit about our back office support team and how they fit into this. But, they have that entrepreneurial spirit of wanting to build an advisory practice, but don't necessarily want to have to go out and start their own firm from scratch. That's really the type of advisor that we're hiring, and we're finding, is hitting the ground running and are doing really well.
Are you giving them sort of a top end expectation of, we think you can work with this many clients and make this much money with hustle? Or, I know it's hard because there's variable pieces in here, with the insurance and the investments, but are you are you telling them a top end, or do you think the top end is the same as any other, advisory firm opportunity?
So when you say top end, do you mean in terms of what?
Compensation. I'm sorry. So the compensation that they can make.
It's interesting. Yeah. So we do go through compensation with them and let them know the range for the first year and beyond, what that looks like. We actually developed some pretty unique programs around retention programs for college education after they've been with us 15 years to pay for college for their kids, or mortgage payoff, stuff that we would do for our business owners, clients at CP. So maybe that on another day, but we've got pretty robust. We just took a clean sheet of paper and said, what could we do to make sure we get these people on board? And once they're here, what can we do to take care of them so they never want to leave again? And so we do model up front what that looks like, but it's very membership based. It's very client focused. A byproduct is how much money they make. And we do it based on, here's what we expect you to do once you're up and running after your first 90 days, as far as bringing households in, memberships in. And here's what you're required to do. Kind of here's what your baseline minimum is, so that people just need to know where they stand. And then just to kind of reiterate what James says, a portion of it is on them and their natural market for wanting to help people that they already know. A portion of finding new clients is on us through social media and these seminar learning sessions that James is putting on, and that's working well to drive a portion of their new clientele that way. And then just getting this up and running. But for every boomer client we have at CP, and we have a lot, they usually have multiple, it's a many to one sort of thing, many millennial children that they want to have taken care of. I really believe Blueprint can do it better because of the intentionality. And so all three of those things, how they find their own natural market, our social media, it's kind of seminar, and then selling sort of thing, and then the CP Boomer referral program are all three methods for driving clients.
That makes sense. So they have a couple of avenues. So even you're not going to let a Blueprint advisor necessarily work with your Boomer client, or your CP advisors work with the kids of clients. You're going to push them to where they need to go, but there's compensation to reward that motion. So what is the overlap? So James started to mention this around back office. So, is Blueprint building its entirely own infrastructure, or are you able to leverage CP's infrastructure?
So my term would be shared services that I would categorize like all the following. Some are more important than others, but like accounting and finance and HR, those are things that Blueprint doesn't need right now and won't need for a while. And so CP does that. I mean, we'll do that for a while. I'll say the investment desk to process new business, underwriting services for life insurance, disability. Those things are all things that CP handles. Our planning group, our back office group that puts cases together for our advisors, is something we do at CP. That's our Blueprint people have access, and that's a part of their process is to use that back office. Although there's a liaison at Blueprint to help with that to make sure that we connect all the dots. Training group, I could go on, but there's lots of things that CP does that Blueprint won't need to do for the longest time, and CP does well enough. So
are you paying, do you have a management contract between the two entities? I know I'm getting into the details here, but
we basically have a charge on a financial statement from one firm to the other based on monthly services and based on headcount of Blueprint advisors. And it just goes up and up and up. In a weird way, therefore, it makes CP be more profitable, although clearly we're moving money from one pocket to the other. But they are two separate companies.
Right. Yeah, it builds a loan. Yeah, you have a loan out and money coming back. It's fun, circular. We do that with some of our subsidiaries as well. So I want to just ask the elephant in the room question, and that is, how in the world did you get this approved by all of the other entities that you have to answer to? Because if you're an independent RIA fee only, you don't have to worry about anyone else's approval, right? You just make the decision. But because you've got a broker-dealer relationship, you've got the insurance companies, how did you have to get this approved, or because it's a subsidiary, it just fell outside their purview? I guess talk to me about the approval process.
Yeah, I mean, our firm, our broker-dealer, is a very progressive broker-dealer. They let us, I'll say partnership is the word, and they get I guess we use these dangerous words up front. You said innovation and the like, they want to help push and experiment for what sounds like a good idea. So they've never resisted anything that we've come up with that I know of, although it may seem to take a long time, as James may attest, right? We through partnership get it done. And I'd like to say, and James and I have had this conversation, how the added protection that you get with a BD, and whether this will always remain a BD or not, I think as the world turns, I'm going to say probably not. But as it stands right now, yes. But again, we have, I'll say, more scale with the right BD than you'd find at the other non-BD firms, like being able to do monthly payments via ACH and the like. That's as of now done. We've checked that box, and that's not something you're going to find anywhere else these days. It's not that you couldn't engineer some other way. It's just, I think in the world that we know of today, BDs have other competitive advantages that independent RIAs do not, and vice versa, right? I don't think there's a clear winner one way or the other like there was 10 years ago. That's just my opinion on how the world has turned, though. Park Avenue Securities out of New York. Small BD, 3,000 or so reps.
Yeah, because there's sort of two parts to this. Is one, they had, my understanding, and I've never worked with a broker dealer, so correct me if this is incorrect, if this is wrong, but you had to get them to allow you to put sort of monthly subscription, this membership, service model on sort of that template fee agreement. Is that accurate? I'm trying to think of the terms.
Yeah, template fee. Yeah, template fee, make it so it's just direct out of their checking account. You're working on other forms of electronic payment, not credit cards, but other forms of electronic payment as we speak. And those are things that any company has to be this is more of a technological concern, quite frankly. So, privacy and security, cyber, than anything else. And they never said no to any of those things. It just takes time because they're checking the boxes around, and do it in a safe way, right? In this world that we live in. You don't want to be front page of the Wall Street Journal or the Charlotte Observer.
So now that they've approved it, how do they monitor it? Because I was talking with one compliance associate at a broker dealer that said, their thing is within 6 months of the agreement, there has to be a financial plan in place or the client gets a refund. So what are your I guess, what are their expectations? You probably have different expectations that are more aggressive, but I guess what are their monitoring expectations on how they're ensuring this new concept of monthly pay for financial planning services?
So again, we were doing a lot of annual planning with an upfront planning fee, or quite frankly, half of it upfront, half of it delivery of the plan. Us charging monthly was really more of a modal change. It just made perfect sense for this demographic than reinventing a new wheel any other way. So this is really just about can they pay in a different mode, and can they pay via ACH because no one seems to have checks anymore. So
right. I was looking for my checkbook the other day, and I was like, do I have one? Like maybe.
Yeah, it's where have I seen that? 6 months ago, I saw that. So we have 6 months. We have a check and balance that every 6 months we have to be able to show that we in fact delivered a plan. We do a lot of this electronically, so it's very easy to do. Again, we have a back office group that helps do all this because a good advisor doesn't always have the skill set to be totally organized on what I call their backstage. Like their front stage with a client is perfect, impeccable. They deliver the goods. Backstage isn't always perfect. And that's where that back office helps to make sure that we hold our promises to the clients and deliver those fees, along with the inspection of are we doing that on the back end. But I don't know if I'm answering your question other than to say that we've been doing that for a while as is. We just were not doing it from a monthly ACH sort of perspective before.
That makes sense. And it sounds like, your broker are sort of taking the same route. Maybe they're all talking, but is around sort of this 6-month expectation, just so that it's monitorable. Because, and we're huge advocates for pay monthly. It doesn't mean you deliver services monthly. And so that, every 6 months or something, that they're monitoring that something is being delivered, that there is a service being provided. Now, the truth is when a client is paying $100 or $200 a month, they cut off the service if they're not using it. But I know the regulators don't hear that yet. This isn't a $10 a month service that sort of gets swept under the rug, which I guess, James, what is this current service model and fee structure? So I'm a new client coming to Blueprint. How is my fee determined?
It's a great question. So we've tied or pegged the fee structure specifically to income. So anything under $75,000 a year is $25 a month, and up to $150,000 a year is $50 a month, and then $150 plus is $75 a month. And the reason we did that, I know you're probably surprised at how low that is, but we really, at the beginning here, don't want the fee to be an obstacle to people getting help. We really want to just get as many people who don't know what financial planning is or have never experienced it, but know that they need help financially in the doors without the fee being an obstacle. And you notice we put the fee on the website and the comparison chart on the website for just that reason, in terms of what actually are we doing for the fees, because I believe that's important. I think people mistakenly think, or maybe not so mistakenly think, that because they're not rich, they don't need help, or they can't get help if they're not already wealthy, or if they go looking for help, it's going to cost an arm and a leg. And we really felt like it was important to not have the fee be a barrier to entry for people who are truly interested in getting help. We want to try to shepherd as many through the process as are willing to come to us and ask for help. And we know over time that people, just with getting a few things right at the beginning of the process, over time can make huge impacts on their degree of financial success going forward. And so that's really sort of why we did it that way.
So I'm looking at your website right now, and it shows investment management as part of the fee. So is that part of the $25 to $75 a month, or is it an add-on fee that they can just get access to that service?
Great question. So it's a separate add-on fee. So there's actually a fee schedule that a client would get when they come on board, that we a la carte the fees basically. So the monthly fee is the annual planning fee broken down for their convenience. But the investment management fee schedule is just separate. So we've identified several third-party asset managers that we'll use with Blueprint clients for investment management when that is appropriate for a client, if they have assets that need to be brought over and need to be managed. And we apply just an AUM fee there. That's just a flat fee based on the size of the account. It's pretty standard.
So are you making any money on the investment management, or are you just passing through sort of the managed account fee for them?
Oh, no, we are.
Okay. Yeah, just being sure. I'm pro making money. So just curious.
No, we are. There's a component of an AUM fee that would go to the advisor. Yes. But we're not in-house modeling our own portfolios in-house, or we're using the third-party asset managers for the actual platform of what's being managed. Does that answer your question?
It does. So there's so much I want to cover in this, but one of the things is I'd be remiss if I don't ask about the marketing, because even before y'all actually launched Blueprint, I knew the name of it. I knew the brand because y'all were doing so much on social media. And obviously you have someone dedicated to this, but did you hire a branding marketing company to come in and help you design this? Or do you just have someone in-house that has a marketing brilliance around this? Because I mean, it's just awesome to see the brand, not so much the marketing, but the overall brand and the continuity of it.
Well, thank you. Multifaceted answer to that. So when we started off, we did have a PR firm at the very, very beginning that we brought in that just kind of helped us launch in terms of just getting our thoughts together. They brought in a graphic designer at the beginning who designed our logo. And it's a funny story why the logo is orange, but the name of the firm is Blueprint, but we'll leave that for another day.
It's the number one question that I get these days. Yeah.
But anyway, we had them on up through our launch, but largely what you see in terms of what's out there in terms of us and who we are is really us internally. So it's largely me. I've started way back when I started college. I was actually a graphic design major and was going to school for like marketing and product design. And then the tech bubble blew up and that all fell apart. And I ended up changing majors and ended up where I am. But have held on to some of those skills and just I enjoy that creative space. So a lot of the ideas we've had have just come from us, trying to kick around things that are different and things that are, unusual for financial services that we're trying, to be both sort of thought provoking and eye catching in terms of what you see out there, but also be really, really consistent with the branding, as you mentioned. So like the color palette on the website and just the use of color in our office space, it's the same color palette. So trying to just make everything as visually consistent from a design standpoint as possible to really create the brand, like you said. And it was a hard thing to do as quickly as we did it because we really came out of nowhere and went from not having a name to being pretty much branded and marketing, I would say, inside of a 90-day period. So we had to move pretty quickly, and we really were figuring out who we were and what the messaging was, and a lot of that as we went. But all the copy on the website that you see and the blog and the ebook and all that's all me and my voice.
So I would encourage listeners to go to planwithblueprint.com because I think this is a phenomenal example of what real marketing and branding looks like. And in financial planning, we haven't had real marketing and branding. We've just had, if you were listed on the NAPFA site or FPA or, basically if you knew, 30 people, you could just bring in clients. If you had some clients, they'd refer new clients. You didn't have to do this stuff. But this is sort of the new age of planning. And I personally believe that it's not going to be too much longer before this has to either become the norm or the firms will be failing because they don't have a brand. They're not actually out there marketing and having consistency, because this is what we've come to expect from every other industry. Just financial planning is really, really, really far behind when it comes to all of this. So I would just encourage folks to go to the website and check it out, because I think it's a great example of how you build this sort of singular voice for what's going to be 22 advisors in the next year and a half, that they're all sort of speaking the same language and talking to the same clients.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. That's the idea. And it's I haven't worked really in that space professionally, but just I feel like I have a pretty good grip on it. And I've been trying to just absorb as much as I can from, all of the resources that are out there talking about sort of the future of this stuff as it relates to clients. And I'm trying to put as much of that stuff into practice with this as we possibly can, because I believe that will be the thing that lets us scale. That if we want to move, more nationally, that we have a recognized brand and that people understand what we do and how we do it, it'll make that a lot easier than if we're trying to reinvent it every time.
Yeah, I think it's very telling. The order in which y'all hired people is completely different than what most financial planning firms do, right? We normally hire advisor. Oh crap, we need some like ops support because our advisors are tired of doing it. Advisor. And you really went with managing director, talent, recruitment, marketing, advisor. And I think that's telling, because I think that's how you truly build a brand and a platform. And by turning it into a business from day one, instead of sort of hacking it by being as bootstrap as possible. And one more question for you, James, and that is just looking at your team page. You have done a wonderful job of maintaining or building a very diverse team just from racial and gender diversity. as well as possibly some other data points there. So I guess, is that a focus that you've given your recruiter and that you're taking, or is that just, you're seeing that the culture is attracting the culture of the company is attracting in sort of folks from various backgrounds?
I think it's more the latter, although I'll say Charlotte's a pretty diverse place as cities go, and there's a lot of younger people here in a general sense. That our average population age here, I think, is declining every year by virtue of younger people moving here from other places for job opportunities and so forth. But it wasn't something we really set out to do specifically. It's just kind of been the byproduct of seeing a lot of different candidates, but the most qualified ones have really stood out and shown. And we've been really fortunate that across both our leadership team as well as our advisors that we've hired, we do have a very good cross section of race and gender and so forth. And I think that's really important because you guys talk so much about niches that we couldn't get through an episode without mentioning the word niche.
I appreciate that you're the one that said it. 5 minutes or 3 minutes before the end of the episode, people have to hear it.
The way I look at this is that Blueprint as a whole is going to be a sizable firm that isn't necessarily serving one niche beyond maybe life stage, but by hiring a lot of different types of people to be our advisors, they're naturally going to work with different types of clients best. And the more diverse our workforce as we continue to grow, the more broad of a cross section of the population will effectively be able to serve by having a team of advisors that are all different from each other. And I've got this vision that one day, I'm going to come in the lobby in the morning of the building and look through our big glass doors, and the lobby is just going to be full of people doing things, having coffee, and you'll see people having client meetings, and there'll be all this activity in the lobby, and you won't be able to tell just looking through the glass doors who the client is and who the advisor is. And, I think once we reach that point, I think that will be sort of how I would define success for my vision of the firm, is that we've really leveled this playing field for, who has access to advice and frankly, who can come into the profession and be an advisor. That just, you can look around the room and see a whole bunch of different people and you can't tell who's who.
Absolutely love it. I'm so excited to see the growth of the platform. And I said, may have to have Andy back on to talk through a few of these specific things just around building and scaling a larger firm, and just some of these pieces, especially those employee benefits, would be fascinating to hear about. But I definitely am looking forward to sort of tracking y'all's progress to see, client acquisition is usually the concern. So how do you manage client acquisition? And then how do you sort of manage the growth? Because it is going to grow fast, which is a fun problem to have, but it is a problem nonetheless. People think hyper growth is the easy, I guess. And it's certainly not. But you seem to have a wonderful foundation for being able to actually grow and scale the service model. So I guess as we're coming to a close, I'll ask you each the final question. I'll start with Andy, since I suspect he hasn't ever heard it before, and put him on the spot. And that is, if there's one piece of advice that you wish you could go back and give your younger self, and maybe this is the Andy that's looking at launching, this service model, or maybe this is before that, but sort of one piece of advice you wish you could go back and give yourself, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
One piece of advice. I think earlier in my life, I probably didn't take certain risks that I should have in life and in business, and didn't want to push myself to be to an uncomfortable place. And I've learned I don't think that I'm old, right? But I've learned as I've gotten older that it's okay to be uncomfortable, and it's okay, growth. If you're growing in a good way, you need to be uncomfortable, not feel the fear and do it anyway, sort of okay, or saying. But I do try to put myself in a place where I'm uncomfortable a little bit every quarter, every year. And Blueprint's one of those things that just goodness comes out of things that are worthwhile. We have to take some risks for. And I don't know that I did that enough when I was younger. So that's what popped in my head. First time I've heard that question ever. So good question.
Yeah. Well, I ask every guest that. So James may have been prepared for it.
I'll be ready next time, just so you know. Okay.
So James, how would you answer that question?
I would say it's similar to what Andy said, but I would say I would give myself the advice to not be afraid to do different things. And I went through 8 years of my life where I was the only breadwinner in the household with a stay-at-home spouse and a small child, and economy was uncertain, and my job at times was uncertain, but just to not be afraid. And I would have started the CFP process a lot sooner. that I started kicking it around the idea of really going into planning and being more planning focused as early as like 2009. And it took me about 3 years to really commit to the process and to absorb the costs and all of going through that program. But, knowing what I know now, looking backwards at it, I would have liked to have done that sooner. I could have probably moved more into work that was more satisfying and meaningful to me sooner in my career than I did. But all things are what they are, right? You learn from your experiences, and here we all are. And, I couldn't ask to be doing anything any better or different than what I'm doing now. So just grateful to be here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to come on and just sort of sharing your path and what you're up to, because I think it's awesome. I think it's going to be game changing, especially because you're coming at it from the other side of the industry in a way, doing the same thing, but from a different angle, which I think is huge, because I think it's going to just continue to show folks that this is not a fad. We're not going to stop talking about serving millennials, because one day millennials are going to be the age of baby boomers. And some of us just prefer to work with them while they're this age instead of waiting. But I appreciate you and I commend you for taking the risk, quite frankly, and investing in this as early as you have. But I have no doubt that it will pay dividends. But thank you both for coming on the show. Let Ruby help you turn rings into relationships. For a special offer, visit callruby.com/XYPN and use promo code XYPN, or call 1-844-853-7829. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.